Arnold is the seventh prince of the Adrasia Empire, but he spends most of his time pretending to be an adventurer out in the country because he hates the prince life. But one day, he is suddenly called back by the family butler, Sebas, and informed that General Dominic has died. This immediately gets Arnold's attention, so he asks Sebas if he thinks this was an assassination. Sebas says he isn't sure since information on the matter is still scarce, but he does think someone orchestrated it since not much effort is being put into looking for the culprit. Arnold plans to head back to check things out for himself, but before that, he still has a quest to finish here. So he puts on his adventurer disguise and heads down to take out the Minotaur he was hunting. Normally, he'd like to have a little more fun with his battles, but since he's in a hurry right now, he decides to finish this quickly. So he hits the Minotaur with an anti-gravity spell, and while it is floating uncontrollably in the air, Arnold proceeds to hit it with 3 spells at once, killing it instantly. A little while later, Arnold heads over to the guild to report the success of his mission, and as proof, he carries the horn of the Minotaur in. The other guild patrons are all amazed that he was able to take a Minotaur down all by himself, but the receptionist doesn't seem surprised at all, since this much is to be expected from one of the Empire's 5 SS-class adventurers. Arnold then drops a few gold coins on the counter and says he's buying a round of drinks for everyone there, including the receptionist, and in exchange, he'd like to be given top priority next time. There's a high difficulty quest available, a request which everyone is more than happy to accommodate. Once his business at the guild has been settled, Arnold heads into a dark alley, takes off his adventurer disguise, and then opens a portal so he can finally return to the capital to handle things over there. Once he's back, the first thing he does is meet with the 8th prince, his brother Leonard, to find out what's going on. He asks Leonard if it's true that Dominic is really dead, and Leonard confirms it. He feels guilty because the only reason Dominic died was because Dominic was on his side. Arnold asks if Leonard has any idea who could have been behind it, but Leonard says he isn't sure. In that case, Arnold asks him what he intends to do about it, and Leonard says he'd rather avoid fighting within the family, which is a response Arnold was expecting. But he tells Leonard that if he doesn't join the fight for the throne like the rest of their siblings, then he's going to be targeted by the others until they have wiped out his faction entirely. And that includes Arnold and their mother as well. Leonard understands Arnold's point, so he apologizes for being so indecisive until now and declares that he will officially join the fight for the throne. Arnold is glad to hear it and assures Leonard that he will help him every step along the way, and their first order of business will be to build themselves a strong fighting force, so no one can threaten Leonard's life. To that end, Arnold says he's going out to recruit allies, but he tells Leonard not to get his hopes up because almost all the powerful nobles are already allied with the other factions. Leonard says he understands and thanks Arnold for his help, but honestly, Leonard thinks Arnold would be a far better fit for an imperial candidate since he's much more capable than Leonard is. But Arnold shuts that idea down quickly, because all he wants is to live a quiet life and get married someday, and he can't do that if he's the emperor, so he needs Leonard to become the emperor instead. Later on, Arnold is talking with Sebas, and Sebas asks why he didn't inform Leonard that he is actually an SS rank adventurer, but Arnold says there's no way he could do that because ancient magic is forbidden among the members of the royal family, and Arnold's entire adventurer kit revolves around ancient magic. So if he were to reveal himself, it would only cause trouble for Leonard's faction. Even so, Sebas reminds Arnold that his adventurer persona is considered one of the most powerful people in the nation, so he's sure that having someone like that on his side would be advantageous to Leo, taboo or not, and Arnold is aware of that, but he still wants to leave it as a last resort. Besides, he would prefer it if people kept thinking he was nothing but an inept prince because it is easier to defeat an opponent who underestimates you. He asks Sebas if there are still any noble households that haven't sided with the other factions, and Sebas informs him that there is only one, the Kleinert family. Arnold is surprised to hear this since the Kleinerts are a rather big household, so he wonders why they haven't sided with any faction yet. He knows there must be some reason for it, so he asks Sebas if he knows any details, and Sebas informs him that their territory is currently suffering from an invasion of magical beasts, and they are nowhere near resolving the issue, so they haven't had time to get involved with the royal selection battle yet. Arnold thinks it would be a good idea if he went there in his adventurer outfit to take care of their problem and say Leonard was the one who sent him, so they will be in his debt. Sebas warns him that such a plan would risk the Kleinerts becoming wary of Leonard, because they may fear the fact that he has the capability of deploying an SS rank adventurer. But Arnold thinks an outcome like that would be perfect, because if people believe this faction has the backing of an SS rank adventurer, then the enemy will think twice before making any moves again. He just needs to be careful to make sure no one makes the connection between the adventurer, Silver, and him. He then puts on his adventuring outfit and prepares to pay the Duke of Kleinert a visit. But before he goes, Sebas warns him to be careful because the Kleinert's daughter is the Blau Mo, a person who received the blue gull from his father at one point. She is also extremely pretty, so Sebas warns Arnold not to fold under any circumstances if she tries to charm him. Arnold assures him that he doesn't need that kind of lecture from him, and he then teleports over to the Duke's mansion. But as he is about to head in, he is stopped at the front gate. The guard demands to know who he is, and Arnold explains that he is the SS rank adventurer, Silver. But the guard doesn't believe him because if an adventurer of such high rank were to come here, the guild would have mentioned it beforehand. Silver says he's here on orders from Prince Leonard, and he then reaches into his jacket and is about to pull out his guild card as proof of his identity. But the guard arrogantly stops him and tells him to get lost. For a moment, Silver begins thinking about possible ways to get around this idiot, and he tells him that refusing to let him in is an insult against both him and Prince Leonard. But just then, he notices the Duke's daughter looking at him through the window, and he realizes that she really is as beautiful as the rumors say, because one look at her, and he already feels like folding, even though they haven't said a word to each other yet. Silver decides to leave for now and teleports back to the castle, and Sebas is surprised to see that he returns so soon, but he explains that there has been a change of plans. So now, instead of Silver paying them a visit, it's going to be Arnold. And since that guard rudely refused to let Silver, and despite him being there to help, Arnold now has all the leverage he will need to force the Duke into a deal. It takes Arnold around 5 days to get to the Kleinert domain since he can't let people know he can teleport, and once he arrives, he immediately meets with the Duke. The Duke says it's nice to see Arnold again since the last time he saw him was when he was 10 years old, and he asks what brings him to his domain today. So Arnold says he's here to collect compensation. The Duke asks him what he's talking about, but Arnold yells and tells him not to play dumb because Prince Leo, out of the kindness of his heart, had heard about the beast invasion the Duke's territory had been suffering and decided to ask the adventurer Silver for help, yet the Duke disrespectfully sent him away. The Duke stands up in a panic when he hears Arnold mention the name Silver because he recognizes it as the name of the famous SS rank adventurer, and he asks if someone like that really came all the way out there because he didn't hear anything about it. Arnold yells and asks if the Duke is trying to call him a liar, and Sebas plays along, acting as the good cop and telling Arnold that it is possible the Duke really isn't aware of what happened, so he says it might be a good idea to give the Duke some time to go investigate the matter and get to the bottom of it. Arnold agrees to allow it, so the Duke leaves to go ask around regarding the matter, and once he is out of the room, Arnold smiles because this is exactly how he had hoped this would play out. A little while later, Arnold hears the Duke yelling at his son, and shortly after that, the Duke drags his son in to apologize to Arnold. He explains that he had left his son in charge of watching the gate a couple of days ago as a character-building exercise, and a man claiming to be Silver had shown up, but his son sent him away unceremoniously. The Duke's son says no one would have expected an SS-rank adventurer to show up out of the blue, so he thought it had to have been an imposter. But the Duke tells him that is still no excuse for refusing to confirm his identity before chasing him away. Arnold then speaks up and asks the Duke how he intends to make this right because, after suffering disrespect of that level, Silver might not want to work with Leonard anymore. The Duke realizes how serious the situation is, so he offers his life to atone for what happened. But Arnold says he doesn't want the Duke's life, nor does he want his son's life, because things like that are of no benefit to him. Just then, the Duke's daughter rushes into the room and asks Arnold if he will accept their apology if she offers to give herself to him. The Duke pleads with Arnold not to do anything to Finn because she doesn't know what she's talking about, but Finn tells everyone she happened to see Silver for a moment the day he came there, and she did nothing to prevent this situation, so she is just as guilty as everyone else. Both the Duke and his son beg Arnold to leave Finn out of this and punish them instead because they are the ones at fault, and Sebas tells Arnold that, given how sincere they are being in their apology, he may want to consider being lenient with them. Arnold asks him what exactly they are supposed to do if Silver refuses to help them after what happened, but Sebas says Silver is a loyal man, so he surely wouldn't turn his back on Leonard over a minor issue like this. In addition, he's sure that Leonard himself would be more than willing to forgive the Duke and his family since it was an honest mistake. Arnold pretends to think things over and then tells the Duke to arrange for someone to find Silver so he can talk to him on their behalf. He and Finn end up going out to meet Silver, and to make this believable, Arnold creates a double Lelouch-style illusion to act as Silver while he is also present so Finn never suspects that he is actually the real Silver. He has Silver act disappointed and say that he only came there to help because Leonard asked him to, yet they disrespected him so blatantly. That said, he still has a duty to fulfill Leonard's request, so as long as Arnold manages to get the Duke to swear loyalty to Leonard in the royal selection, he is willing to save the territory. Arnold says he hasn't actually managed to get a promise from the Duke yet regarding that matter, but he's sure the Duke will be willing to offer his support if Silver helps. However, Silver says he's not ready to trust the Duke's word alone because he may betray them at any moment, so until he signs a binding contract, Silver won't be lifting a finger to help. Hearing that, Arnold lowers his head and pleads with Silver to save the territory first because more lives will be lost if they wait. And seeing Arnold plead on their territory's behalf really tugs at Finna's heartstrings and makes her believe Arnold is a truly caring man. At Arnold's insistence, Silver eventually agrees to take on the job and eliminate the monsters first, but he tells Finna that he's counting on her to convince the Duke's family to side with Leonard because he wouldn't be doing this otherwise. After that, Arnold and Finn are set to leave, but before Arnold gets in the carriage with Finn, Cebus tells him he's impressed by the fact that he was able to create a magical illusion to act as Silver because he has never seen anything like it before, and Arnold's acting back there was top-notch as well because he almost had Cebus believing the whole situation was real. A little while later, Arnold arrives at the portion of the domain where the slime infestation is strongest, and although each individual slime may not pose much of a threat, with this many of them in one place, it becomes really dangerous. An adventurer party consisting of 2 A ranks and 4 B ranks had already been sent out to help handle the situation, but they lack the firepower necessary to destroy the mother slime that is producing all these smaller slimes. Silver doesn't want to be rude, so he asks them if they are willing to step aside and let him handle this quest instead, and the leader of the party recognizes him as an SS rank adventurer, so he tells him to go right ahead since none of them are strong enough to do it. The leader feels a bit frustrated by how weak and powerless he was to fix the situation there, but Silver assures him that his presence wasn't useless because if he and his team hadn't been there, then the infestation would have spread far more than it already had. Silver turns toward the direction of the mother slime, raises his hand, and casts an ancient spell that destroys everything in that direction, including the mother slime. He then turns back to the party and tells them they can take credit for this if they want since he isn't really interested in the whole glory thing, and after that, he teleports back to his room. He then takes off his mask so he can finally relax. But unbeknownst to him, Finna had actually come to his room looking for him. So she sees him take his outfit off and realizes that he is Silver. Arnold demands to know what she's doing in here. So Finn apologizes and explains that she wanted to bring him some snacks earlier. But when she got here, the room was empty. So she let herself in and left the snacks on the table over there, which is when he teleported in. Arnold blames himself for being careless enough to leave his room door unlocked. But now that Finn has found out about his secret, he can't simply let her leave. Finna promises that she won't breathe a word about his secret identity to anyone else, but Arnold doesn't seem so convinced since Finna just said all that pretty loudly. Finna realizes what she just did and apologizes again, but Arnold isn't really worried about it since he already has soundproofing spells all over this room. Though, he is a little surprised by how calm Finn is being about this whole situation, and he asks her if she isn't worried he may try to silence her by force. However, the thought never even crossed Finna's mind since, from what she knows about Arnold, he would never do something like that. And if he did end up killing her, then that would mean it was absolutely necessary, so she'd be willing to accept it. Arnold can't believe Finna really trusts him with her life to such a degree, but she reminds him that he is still the hero who saved their domain, whether it be as Arnold or as Silver. So of course she'd trust him. She admits that it's still a little confusing for her to wrap her head around how he appeared in 2 places at once last time, but it's now clear to her that Arnold must be trying to let people think he is nothing more than an insipid prince for the sake of Leonard, which makes him seem even more honorable. Looking at her smile like that, Arnold really doesn't have the heart to silence her, so he agrees to let her go. But he makes her swear that she will not reveal his secret under any circumstances, and Finnis says she completely understands. A little while later, the Duke has a meeting with the A-rank adventurers who have just returned after finishing off the rest of the slimes, and as a token of gratitude, he tells them he has prepared a little extra money in addition to the regular mission reward, but the adventurers politely turn him down because they don't think they deserve it. After all, they weren't the ones who solved the real problem, but they promise that if the Duke ever needs help again, they will make sure they are strong enough to handle it with their own 2 hands. After that, the adventurers leave, and the Duke turns to Arnold to thank him for saving his territory, and as promised, he swears to do everything in his power to make sure Leonard becomes the next king. Arnold is glad to have the Kleinerts on their side since this means Leonard can finally be counted as a 4th force in the succession battle, and while they are on the topic of the succession, the Duke mentions that Finny had asked him to send her with Arnold to act as their ambassador. Arnold is shocked to hear that, and the Duke admits that he was shocked as well when she suggested it. But he can't say no to his little girl, so if she really wants to go, then he won't stop her. Arnold initially tries to reject the offer since he gets the feeling that things will become complicated with Finn around, but the Duke insists. So later that day, Arnold and Finn set off to return to the castle together. Along the way, Finney gets the feeling that Arnold is upset about something, but he clarifies that he's more exasperated than upset because he wasn't expecting her to come with him. He reminds Finn that royal succession disputes have become absolute bloodbaths multiple times in history, and getting personally involved will put her in danger. But Finn was already aware of that, and she says she simply wants to be of service to Arnold in any way she can, so she can repay her debt to him. And besides, she figured he'd be able to rest much easier if she was close by so he could make sure she wasn't revealing his secret. 5 days later, they finally arrive at the castle, and once they get there, Arnold debriefs Leonard on everything that went down since Leo had no idea Arnold was doing any of that. Arnold also chooses to maintain the lie that he and Silver are two separate people, even going as far as to question Silver's motives for cooperating with them when Leo mentions that it's cool that Arnold knows how to get in touch with an SS rank adventurer. He says this so Leo wouldn't become too dependent on the power of Silver, and Leo more or less understands the point Arnold is trying to make. But he has no doubt that Silver must be a good person if he saved the Kleinert territory. Speaking of the Kleinerts, Leo recalls Arnold mentioning that he came back with an ambassador from their family, so he asks who it is, and just then, Finna walks in to introduce herself. Leo recognizes her as the Blau Mo and says he's happy to have her on his side, but getting right down to business, Leo asks how Arnold plans to incorporate Finn into their plans. Arnold says he'd like to leverage Finna's beauty and charisma by having her take the lead in most of their negotiations, which Finn is more than happy to do, and additionally, he wants her to move in and out of the castle a lot so people will see her coming in and acknowledge that the Kleinerts are indeed supporting Leo's faction. Arnold then asks Leo if he has any ideas for other people who could become their allies, but he says there aren't many options since all the strong ones have already joined the other three. Speaking of the other three, Finn admits that she's not well versed in the affairs of the royal family, so she's hoping they can catch her up on who Leo's three rivals are. Leo is surprised that Arnold hadn't explained the situation to her on the ride here, but Arnold says Finn wore him out by asking tons of irrelevant questions, so he never got the chance. Finn apologizes for being such a nuisance, but Leo comments that Arnold must really like her because normally he wouldn't bother responding to questions he deems irrelevant, and hearing that makes her feel a lot better. However, Arnold says she just kept talking even when he tried to ignore her. Anyway, as far as the opposing royal candidates go, there's the second prince Eric Rex, and not only does he control a large portion of the Empire's bureaucracy, he is also known as a brilliant mind throughout the kingdom. Next, there's the third prince, Gordon Rex, and he's currently the most powerful force in the military. And finally, there's Xandra Rex, who is gifted in magic and widely acknowledged by mages all across the Empire. All three were already influential to begin with, but they've been expanding their influence even more in pursuit of the throne, and most nobles have already chosen to support one of those three. The succession dispute has been going on for 3 years now, and it started right after their eldest brother, Wilhelm, died in battle. If he hadn't died, then this entire succession battle would never have happened, but with Wilhelm gone, they need Leo to become king since it's the only way they are going to survive. Just then, Leo's maid, Marie, comes in holding a letter, and after she hands it to Leo, his expression turns grim because it's the response letters from all the nobles he sent proposals to, and pretty much all of them turned him down in favor of one of his siblings, mostly because of money. Unfortunately, Leo simply doesn't have the finances to compete with the kind of money his siblings are offering, so there's nothing he can do. Arnold sighs in frustration because this means they have a lot of work ahead of them if they want to catch up to the others, but Leo tells him not to give up hope because they've at least got the prestigious Kleinert family on their side, and the famous Lady Finn is here to help as well, and she promises to work as hard as possible. But 2 days later, she's already asking Arnold to take a day off with her. She says she'd like to take a look around the royal capital with him since she's new here, but Arnold rejects the idea since she'd draw too much attention if she went around town, and she's probably got a lot of work to do anyway. However, Finn informs him that she hasn't actually received any invitations lately, so she doesn't have any work to do. She also points out that she won't draw any attention if she wears a disguise, but the disguise she had in mind turns out to be a pair of glasses, which really isn't going to do much to conceal her identity. Arnold can see that Finney really wants to go on a tour, so he says he will consider it if she puts a little more effort into her disguise, and Finney is happy to hear that, so she leaves and comes back wearing a cloak, and that's good enough for Arnold, so the two head into town. As they are walking through the streets, Finn asks Arnold all sorts of questions about the shops and stalls nearby, and while they are sitting down for a lunch break, Arnold directs Finna's attention to a tall building nearby and informs her that it's the training ground for the soldiers, and she's amazed because she has never seen anything like it before. She's also really enjoying the sandwich Arnold bought for her since she has never had this kind of cheese before, and she asks what it's made from. So Arnold tells her it was made from Minotaur milk. Finna freezes up for a second after hearing that, but Arnold laughs and tells her he just said that to mess with her because the cheese is actually made from goat's milk. Finna is relieved to hear that, but then she notices Arnold staring off into the distance, so she asks him what's wrong, and he says he was just recalling how he used to play the same way as those kids over there when he was little. Just then, one of the kids accidentally splashes Finny with a water ball, and though she wasn't hurt, it did leave her dress all wet and transparent, so she freaks out, and Arnold drags her off to his tailor so he can get her a new dress to wear. He tells Finna to pick out any dress she likes, but she doesn't know what to choose, so she asks Arnold to pick one for her instead, and since she's insisting, Arnold chooses a white dress, which he thinks will look good on her. While Finn is changing, the tailor jokingly asks Arnold if he's finally thinking about settling down since it's rare for him to go out with a lady like Finn. But Arnold just brushes the idea off and says there's nothing going on between him and Finn. However, as Finna finishes changing and comes out in the dress Arnold picked out, the tailor notices Arnold's eyes light up, and that's the clearest sign of interest he has ever seen. Arnold tells the tailor that he will send Sebas over later to settle the bill for the dress, and the tailor tells Arnold and Finna to have fun on the rest of their date, but they both get embarrassed and tell him that this isn't a date. After that, Arnold and Finn continue going around town to visit all the interesting spots, and by evening, Arnold says it's about time they finally head back home. But Finna actually has one more store she'd like to go to first, so she asks Arnold if he can wait a little, and he agrees, but he tells her to make it quick. Finny thanks him and heads off into the store, but while Arnold is standing outside by himself, a group of nobles from the Holsworth family walk up to him, led by Guido Holsworth, intending to cause trouble. Basically, since Arnold is considered an insipid prince, Guido comes over to pick a fight with him because he believes Arnold has no means to fight back, and despite the fact that Arnold could obliterate him if he wanted to, he chooses to just stand there and take the abuse so he won't blow his cover. However, Finna spots this happening, and she refuses to stand by while Arnold is being abused, so she comes out and reveals herself as the daughter of the Kleinert family in the Blue Mo, which makes Guido panic a little because he hadn't expected Arnold to have such an influential companion. She really lays into Guido, telling him how disappointed she is by the fact that this is how he treats a member of the royal family simply because he believes he has no backing, and she even likens his behavior to blatant disrespect toward the royal family, something that could have severe consequences for Guido. So Guido quickly apologizes and flees the scene. Arnold is glad that that's finally over, but he tells Finn that she really made a huge mess with the stunt she just pulled, because if she had just stayed out of it, Guido doing something like this in public would damage the Holsworth family's name without Arnold having to do anything. But now that she revealed herself, not only is Guido likely to hold some animosity toward her from now on, but this will also hinder Arnold's ability to work in secret since people will pay more attention to him now that they know he has a connection to the Blue Mo. Finn apologizes because she hadn't considered all of that before acting, but Arnold says it's fine since he knows she only did it out of concern for him. If anything, he wants to apologize for spoiling the mood since they were having so much fun until this happened, but Finna tells him he has nothing to be sorry for, and they'll just have to be more careful next time. Arnold is a bit caught off guard since he hadn't even considered the possibility of going out with Finn again, but she says she'd really like to come see the town with him again later, so Arnold agrees to schedule another outing with her. A few days later, Arnold and Leonard are called into a meeting at the royal palace along with all the other members of the royal family because the king has an important announcement to make, and Arnold can already tell that this isn't going to be good news. This was the end of episode 2. Subscribe to not miss the next part.